Hello and welcome everyone to this webinar about the Sea Cargo Charter Annual Disclosure Report, which was published last week. My name is Lena Faber. I'm a project manager at the Global Maritime Forum, and I will moderate today's session. This session is being recorded, and you will be able to access it on LinkedIn in the next few weeks and also on YouTube if you want to. Today, I will firstly introduce to you what is the Sea Cargo Charter and what is the annual disclosure report and what were the key takeaways from the report. And then you will hear live from our speakers, our signatories, which I will quickly introduce to you. So we have Kartik Katavate with us today. He's the head of fuel optimization at Maersk Tankers and the and the treasurer of the Sea Cargo Charter. We have Viviane Philippe, marine project engineer at Total Energies and also the vice chair of the technical committee at the Sea Cargo Charter. And we have Marceau Pierron, carbon trader at Nova Marine Carriers. Welcome all of you, and thank you for speaking, and I'm looking forward to talking to you later today. And after the individual contributions from our speakers, we'll have a live Q&A where you will be able to ask questions. So feel free during the webinar to post your questions in the chat on LinkedIn, and we'll try to compile them and ask them to our speakers later in the Q&A. So I quickly will introduce to you what the Sea Cargo Charter is. So we're a framework for reporting emissions for charterers and ship owners, and we provide a standard methodology for the data collection and reporting of the emissions and to assess the climate alignment of signatories' activities. And I will explain a little moment more about what climate alignment really means. By publicly disclosing the climate alignment of our signatories, we enhance transparency about emissions and the progress of decarbonisation from our signatories. And the ultimate goal is to facilitate decarbonisation and help signatories through getting insights and helping them making data-driven decisions. And last but not least, beyond the reporting, we're a platform for collaboration and knowledge sharing among the signatories so that they can share how they actually manage to reduce emissions. How did we get there? So the Sea Cargo Charter is one of the 3 transparency initiatives hosted by the Global Maritime Forum. We were established in 2020, so this year we're also celebrating our 5th year anniversary. And next to the Sea Cargo Charter, we have the Poseidon Principles for Financial Institutions and Marine Insurance. Yes, so here you can see while signatories engage with the Sea Cargo Charter all year round through meetings and knowledge sharing, the annual disclosure report is our main public product, and it appears annually around June. And last week we published our 4th annual disclosure report. And now I would like to first give you a little bit of background into what climate alignment is, what we published in the report, and then I'll explain to you what the key results of this year's report are. So to understand what climate alignment is, I first wanted to show you our decarbonization trajectories. Here do you see the decarbonization trajectories against which signatories measured their emissions? As many of you might know, in 2023, the International Maritime Organization updated their greenhouse gas strategy with the updated goal to reach net zero emissions from international shipping by 2050. And they also set some interim checkpoints in 2030 and 2040 to reduce emissions by minimum 20%, striving for 30% in 2030, and minimum 70%, striving for 80% by 2040. So the Sea Cargo Charter signatories decided to adopt this ambition, and this is also why we have these 2 decarbonization trajectories. Next slide, please. So the decarbonization trajectories are measured in kind of the emissions intensity. And in Sea Cargo Charter, we look at the Energy Efficiency Operational Indicator, short the EEOI. So the decarbonization trajectories dictate how much emissions can be emitted per amount of cargo transported and per distance traveled. So Sea Cargo Charter signatories need to have information about the cargo they transport and the distance traveled and the emissions of their transport work. Next slide, please. So now let's move to what the decarbonization trajectories are, to what climate alignment actually is. So here you can see exemplary voyages, and in orange you can see the allowed or required emission intensity for each voyage, which is set by the decarbonization trajectories. And in blue you can see the actual emission intensity from each voyage. And then calculating the climate alignment is pretty straightforward. You just take the difference as a percentage between the actual emission intensity and the allowed or required emission intensity of a voyage. And this is how you get the climate alignment score. Here you can see, for example, in the first row, this exemplary voyage had a higher actual emission intensity than it was allowed or required to have to be aligned with the decarbonization trajectory. Therefore, it has a positive climate alignment score, which in Sea Cargo Charter means that the voyage is misaligned with the ambition by the IMO. In SEC, signatories try to get this information for each and every voyage, and they then aggregate a climate alignment score for each vessel category, so each vessel type and size. And ultimately, they take a weighted average of all the voyages and calculate their entire portfolio climate alignment. And in the annual disclosure report, they disclose both their vessel category climate alignment scores and their entire portfolio climate alignment score. And this is how it looks like in a signatory page then. Each Sea Cargo Charter signatory has a graph like this on their disclosure page. And here you can see as an example that the signatory would be misaligned with the decarbonization trajectory by around 23% against the minimum and 30% against the striving trajectory. And you can also, it's illustrated very well that it's the difference between their emission intensity and the required emission intensity to be aligned with the decarbonization trajectory. So now that we all know what climate alignment really means, I'm happy to present to you the key results of this year's report. So this year, 34 signatories reported their climate alignment scores of their activities from 2024. And you can see on this graph that on average, signatories were around 12% misaligned with the minimum and around 18% misaligned with the striving trajectory. 5 signatories were aligned with the minimum trajectory, and 3 signatories were aligned with the striving trajectory. This year, over 90% of all data from signatories was verified, which is a major increase up from 50% from last year. And signatories retained a very high reporting percentage of more than 92%. So that means how much of their voyages are actually covered in the reporting. And on top of that, this year's report was more transparent than before because both the information on whether a signatory verified their data as well as their individual reporting percentage is now published on each individual signatory's reporting page. This year, we could also compare the scores from this year compared to last year because signatories already reported against the new IMO ambition last year. And what we could see is that on average, signatories are less aligned this year. However, we also saw that 19 signatories, so 19 out of 34 signatories, reduced their emission intensity. And while this might seem a little bit unintuitive at first, because 9 signatories of those 19 reported higher climate alignment scores, we realized that what it shows really is how much harder the trajectories become to reach each year. So the pace of progress needs to be really fast to keep track with the steepening trajectories. However, 8 signatories both improved their emission intensity and also reduced their climate alignment scores. And this is how this is an example of a signatory that reduced their emission intensity but had higher climate alignment scores. So I just wanted to illustrate this. So here you can see the gray dot is the emission intensity in 2023. The red dot is the emission intensity in 2024. And you can see that the red dot is placed below the gray one. So this signatory reduced their emission intensity. But if you compare the actual climate alignment scores, the climate alignment scores this year got worse. So yeah, and you can see that this is clearly due to the fact that the trajectories are quite steep. And this is an example of a signatory that reduced both their emission intensity as well as their climate alignment scores. Yes, and with that, I'm happy to move on to the key takeaways from our signatories. And we will start with Kartik Katavate, who's the treasurer of the Sea Cargo Charter. Hi, Kartik.
Thanks, Lena. Thanks for inviting me.
Yes, so I already explained a little bit around what Sea Cargo Charter is and what the annual disclosure report is, but I would like to hear from you, from your perspective as a signatory. Why are you a signatory and why is it an important initiative?
Super. Let me start by congratulating all the signatories for their efforts in regard to the initiative, especially like you mentioned, that it's now the preferred pathway and the verified data. So that, that takes it up a notch. That makes it all the more imperative and assures us of the data quality, which we will talk about in due course. That being said, every company's success is measured by a P&L statement. And with 2024, not only 2024 and 25, but even earlier, we are now seeing that there is a price on carbon in every aspect that we look at. And because of this, that price has made it into our P&L statements. So companies can no longer stand on the sidelines in terms of decarbonization and not be affected by something so integral to the industry. As we already know that 3% of global carbon is emitted by the shipping industry. So we have to be very mindful of this fact. Now, because of all these aspects, every company must understand its operational profiles and the impact of those operational profiles and how to leverage the data that they're getting from all these reporting factors to not only essentially to make sure that they're financially robust, but also identify the areas of improvement at a later stage. And these two aspects, when you look at them collectively, bring to fore the need for a robust reporting system, which is then brought on by the Sea Cargo Charter. And it's fulfilled by the Sea Cargo Charter. Just to elaborate a little more, we are living in the age of data because the tools that we have, the quantum of data that we are ingesting, I think it would be very detrimental for an individual or a company to ignore what the data or the parameters say. Because only when we actually look into the past actions can we truly look into what we can improve in the coming years. So, you know, taking this whole package, I feel that it's most imperative to understand the reporting factor and why something like the Sea Cargo Charter is important in this context.
Yes, definitely. And also, Maersk tankers actually achieved a very great reporting percentage of 99% this year. So almost 100% of your voyages is covered by the reporting. So you have a really good overview. You have almost all the data that you need. Do you have any insights? Can you share how you achieved that and whether being a Sea Cargo Charter signatory helped with gathering all the data?
Um, it's a very loaded question, but when we look at data, we were essentially looking at two things. We are one looking at quality, and the second as coverage. So when you look at when you look at it from these two perspectives, you look at operational advantage. So when I say operational advantage is you would consider the areas which you can leverage with the information that you're getting from the different avenues. And the second part, I'll come to the coverage later. Once we understood and cracked this aspect as to what is going to be our operational advantage, then we decided that, okay, yes, the outcomes and decisions are going to be as good as what the data provides. So if you end up with low quality data, you're going to get poor outcomes. With this understanding, and you have to look at it with a broader perspective. You have to get a buy-in from the vessel staff, you have to get a buy-in from the chartering, you have to get a buy-in from the operators. And once all those cogs are in place and there are no siloed approach, it's only a matter of how you execute it to get the coverage. So actually, I would say that the coverage is a byproduct of us understanding it within the company of how important reporting and decarbonization is. Now, elaborating on that, when you look at, and I'm strictly talking from a commercial operator perspective, from a shipping industry, and also being a marine engineer, the way to reduce consumptions is very simple. It's the technical end and the commercial end. So until these two arms do not work together, or they start understanding what each other are doing, you will automatically see that the data quality improves, and of course the coverage will follow and improve. So I hope that answers the question.
Yes, it does. If maybe I can just follow up on that. So now you mentioned that the quality of data is very important. Can you say a bit more concretely, what do you do with the data and how do they influence your operations then?
So when we talk about quality of data, so we have a complete fuel optimization team, and we have the operators. So the softwares that you use have to be extremely robust, or you have to have validations right at the source of the data. You cannot have you cannot expect the data to come into the secondary factor and then have a human interface wanting to look at all the Excel sheets and going through it. So the validations have to come from the source, and that should be a very first step of data quality. Of course, there are more steps involved in that. And then, of course, you will look at the operating profiles, the activity profiles, the deployment of your vessels, from a fuel optimization perspective, your age of vessel, your dry docks, everything, all these come into play. And this is what the data allows you to a sneak peek into. With the number of paints available to us today, which is the best paint for a particular trading profile? How would it play out in the, as you said, the EOI factor? What if the age of the vessel, how would it play out in a trading pattern? Are we trading it properly? So these are the things that data allows us to decide and decipher.
Great, thank you very much, and I'm sure we can get back to that later also in the Q&A. Yeah, so now I would like to welcome Viviane Philippe from Total Energies. She's also the vice chair of the Sea Cargo Charter Technical Committee. So welcome, Viviane.
Thank you, Lina.
I would like to start. So when I looked through the report, I noticed that Total Energies, that you managed to improve the efficiency of your time-chartered fleet. So I was wondering if you could elaborate a bit more on how you did that and what role Sea Cargo Charter played in that.
Thank you for that question, Lina. So indeed, we improved the efficiency of our time charter fleet, primarily by continuously renewing it with a strong focus on alternative fuels and energy efficiency. If I was to give a few examples, I'd say that, for instance, in the past few years, we have taken delivery of a number of LNG dual fuel tankers, and our most recent LPG carriers are also LPG dual fuel, of course. Since January, we are very happy to report that we have received our first methanol-capable vessels, and we have more to come until December. And last year, we retrofitted our first MR tankers with rod cells. And last but not least, we are rolling out our older LNG carriers, which were fitted with DFD and steam propulsions, and replacing them with vessels equipped with two-stroke engines. Which brings me to my second point. Another factor of improvement is the reduction of our methane emission. This is something we strongly focused in Total Energies. And we also, so in addition to having more efficient engines on board of vessels, we also investigate post-treatment solution for methane slip. On the side of operational efficiency that Kartik touched a little, we are implementing tools such as speed and weather routing optimization software, and we have a program for hull and propeller conditions monitoring to trigger cleaning operation as soon as they're needed. All those projects were started before we joined the Chicago Charter, but being part of the associations, I proved to be a tremendous push in favor of amplifying and multiplying those projects. You asked me what Chicago Charter part what part Chicago Charter played in this sort of improvement of our TC fleet. I think it provided us with something that is very valuable and maybe we did not expect before, which is a science-based tool developed externally and recognized across the industry. And it has enabled us to bring consistency across all our reporting streams, both internally and externally. And to elaborate a bit on this, I'd say now we systematically include the ballast leg emissions within our reportings. I think it strengthened our choice of EUI metric to quantify the fleet efficiency. This from this year, for the first time, we're verified by a third party, which is something new and which is bringing, even more weight and more certainty to analysis. And even the structure of the report itself is bringing something, like the fact that it is split by fleet segment. It has led us to question a lot more the impact of our efforts on the TC fleet, the performance of our vessels even, and where we should focus next. And as you said, Lena, some signatories, among which we are, don't improve fast enough to meet the industry goals. So we know we have some work to do. And to say, if I can say a little word on our voyage charter fleet, Chicago Charter has played a very important role by just being there. Because the fact that several charterers were asking for the same data with the same format, it has eased a lot the data collection process. And we can see it becoming somewhat standard, which is amazing.
Thanks, Vivian. And yeah, I mean, it's great to hear that Chicago Charter is growing into what it strives to be, which is a standard for the industry. And it's great to hear that that's actually what facilitates your decarbonization journey. I also wanted to talk to you a little bit about, because I mentioned earlier that Chicago Charter signatories engage all year round and that the public only sees the report. And you're particularly engaged because you're very active in our technical committee. And so I wanted to ask you if you could describe what does it mean to be part of that and why is it important for you as a signatory to be part of these discussions?
Well, thank you. First of all, I'd like to mention, so we have engaged since the beginning of the association as a founding members and as a drafting member as well. And this is something we wanted to be part of because we see sustainability today as very similar to what safety has been for the industry in the past decades. And we want to support collective initiatives that will benefit everyone, just like we did in the past with safety. And this is the belief that led us to apply to both steering committee and technical committees, because we see those spaces of real opportunities to shape and deeply understand the methods. And to speak a little more about the technical committee and what it implies, so we meet several times a year and we have quite intense discussions, I'd say, about the robustness of the methods, about its possible evolution, especially in relation with the regulation, about the reporting template as well. And all of this in very close collaboration with the advisories. And so we aim at providing solid ground for the steering committee to make the decisions, but not only. We also want to ensure that the methodology stays as up to date and relevant as possible, which can be challenging in today's fast changing landscape, actually. So we try to keep an eye out, an eye open for new ideas. and I think working quite well. From a Total Energies perspective, I think being part of the technical committee has brought us a lot, because it's a very good place to deep dive into all the technicalities of GHG emission reporting, which I think Kartik touched a little bit in his intervention. It helps us. It's also a place where we can confront our experience with other companies or charters that have, and now ship owners who have different trades, different operations, different constraints. And I think it has helped us identify the limitations and shortcomings of our own processes. And so it's very much a mutual enriching progress that we're making. And to finish on a more personal note, I think the exchange in the TechCo, they're very, very instructive, and the collaboration between the members is really good. And I find it very motivating to be among such a group of people that are truly, I think, dedicated to decarbonation and transparency. That's really nice for me too.
Yes, thank you, Vivian. And yeah, I can only agree from the Secretariat side. It's really, really valuable for us to have signatories engaged in the technical discussions and share their experience, and also validate the methodology, but also discuss where there might be shortcomings. And yeah, that would not be possible with just the advisory and us at the Secretariat. So thank you also very much for all your hard work in the technical committee.
Thank you to everyone in the TechCo
Yes.
also.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much, Viviane. I would now like to talk to Marceau, a carbon trader at Nova Marine Carriers. Welcome, Marceau. Thanks for speaking here today.
Thank you very much.
So I also want to pick out something that you wrote in the report. So on your reporting page, firstly, you managed to reduce both your emissions intensity and improve your climate alignment scores compared to last year. And you wrote that by modernizing your fleet and integrating newer and more efficient engines and prioritizing full fuel-efficient vessels, you have successfully reduced your emissions across all vessel categories. So, of course, I'm really interested in this, and if you could elaborate on what exactly you did to reduce your emissions across all vessel categories.
Yeah, with pleasure. So the Sea Cargo Charter I'll start off by saying this has genuinely really helped us, and maybe going back to what Kartik and Vivian were saying earlier, the collaborative environment has helped us effectively drive these decisions quite a while back. I want to say 2 years ago is when we sort of started the programs. What we did is, I guess, what all the others have done as well, to be honest, is implement anti-fouling technologies, look at all the innovation in there, establish maybe some routine hull cleaning. We didn't used to do that as much as we do now. That's really played a big part. And then strategically phasing out the old assets, the less efficient ships, in favor of acquiring modern fuel efficient designs, either already on the secondary market. There are some really big disparities there, and we've prioritized the vessels with efficient designs. And then on the new build programs as well, we've incorporated quite a lot of dual fuel engines, methanol ready as well. We're supposed to take delivery of at least 2 this year, I think, hopefully, all going well. Yeah, we haven't sold any sails on the ships yet, but I'm pushing that we try and get one of those done. That would be really nice. And one thing we have done as well is try to spend less time in ports. That's really helped our climate alignment score. That's one of the driving factors actually this year on the operation side. Hopefully that answers the question a bit.
Yes, perfect. Yeah, thanks a lot for that. And maybe we can hear more about that in the Q&A later as well. I also want to ask you, so Nova Marine Carriers has been a signatory of Sea Cargo Charter since its inception, since 2020. And since then, there obviously have been a lot of developments in the regulatory field. So we have EU ETS, Fuel EU Maritime. Now soon we have the new IMO regulations. So what role do these new regulatory requirements play in your decision making, and how does Sea Cargo Charter tie into that, if at all?
Yeah, it does. So when the EU regulations, i.e. the EU ETS, the Fuel EU Maritime, as you said, were sort of being finalized, because we'd been a signatory right from the start, we were already well informed about our exposure, and then it was really easy for us to calculate effectively the financial implications. But I think more importantly, and this ties back also to the collaborative side of the Sea Cargo Charter, we had already identified areas of improvements and which ones we could use on which trades. So going back to what Kartik said, some trades, there are some efficiency solutions we should look at, and for other trades, it's a completely different one. And we had identified effectively all those efficiency yields. And I think the Sea Cargo Charter, the fact that we had looked at so much data and run root cause analysis, etc., and just shared with other signatories what works, what doesn't, that really helped our decision making. It was obviously pushed by the financial cost linked to the regulations. Let's not lie about that. But we were able to take those decisions sooner, effectively, rather than, and we come from the dry bulk sector, and I think the shipping industry is quite well known that the dry bulk sector tends to lag a bit in these areas. And we saw many of our counterparts effectively discovering the regulations and the implications kind of once they were already in place. And we were able to kind of front run this a bit. We already had the programs in place and we knew what we wanted to do. And we did, and it's borne its fruit this year, and we're very happy. I think we're really happy as well because as an owner operator, Nova Marine Carriers, let's say, structurally benefits from consistently detailed voyage emission data because we bunker the ships, we follow all the ops spend their days looking at this all the time, and they are the ones putting in the bunker requirements, etc. So we have, let's say, high quality data. I guess most of the signatories on the chartering side can probably attest that's effectively half the work done. But with this, we were able to sort of, that the number of voyages we were doing effectively allowed us to sort of really identify what areas we wanted to improve first. And this year it's worked out, and we're really happy about it.
Great, thank you so much. Yeah, thanks for that. I would now like to invite Kartik and Vivian back on the panel for our Q&A. So I think we received a question online on LinkedIn. Someone's asked, and any of you can volunteer and jump in. So someone's asked, how should the shipping industry balance economic competitiveness with environmental responsibility amid evolving climate standards? So kind of, yeah, the balance between the economic competitiveness and the environmental responsibility. Kartik, do you want to volunteer to start?
Yeah, definitely. Would love to. And it's a very good question. I mean, you can talk about it for hours on end, but um, I'm just playing devil's advocate. I don't think that. I think it's a wrong notion that economic competitiveness and environmental responsibility are diametrically opposite to each other. I think we need to change our narrative here that both of them will move hand in hand. So if you, and like I said earlier, when you're looking at data, you can look at deployment, you can look at differentiation in terms of technical aspects, you can look at future fuels, you can look at green corridors. All these things play into the evolving climate standards, are going to help us in the evolving climate standards. And this will also give us the competitive, or I would say a vessel. We have to, sorry, I'm going to rephrase that we have to understand that a vessel eco vessel with all these things in place will always end up being more competitive than one of the older tonnage. And at that point, and bunkers that makes up say 40 to 50% of a voyage, if you end up saving on that, you're actually playing into the economic competitiveness that we always talk about. So these are not two diametrically opposite or two aspects which are averse to each other. We have to bring the narrative that they move on parallel paths.
Thanks, Kartik. Marceau, Viviane, would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah, sure. I can add. I fully agree with this completely. I mean, and going back maybe to the EU regulation again, this has genuinely changed the way we distribute the fleet for us. We're very exposed, for example, to Europe. We trade a lot in Europe. And we've made sure that all of our good ships are around here, and they do trade at a premium. And effectively, the market recognizes this. And I'm sure all Kartik, you've probably seen the same thing, right? They really do. The commercial side is aware of it because on the bunkers, on the carbon, etc., the costs are now very easy to sort of calculate.
Exactly.
Thank you. Okay, I would like to move on to the next question, getting a bit back to Sea Cargo Charter. So Viviane, you already pointed out that, we have a lot of discussions about the methodology and about reporting and how to improve the framework and try to be up to date with the regulations. So according to you, and maybe Viviane, we can start with you, what improvements do you see that Sea Cargo Charter has made over the last now 5 years of its existence?
Data collection. Data collection is so much easier. We started collecting data for charter vessels a bit before joining Sea Cargo, and it proved to be a headache. It was impossible. They were not impossible, but many owners were reluctant to share data. We had, of course, came over with our own formats, and a few other charters had done same at the moment. So it wasn't working very well. And then you got this, I think about 20 signatories at the beginning that come in. They have the same template. They come, they explain it's not for commercial purposes. It's really just for transparency initiative, and it changes everything. It really and now we can see 5 years on, it works smoothly. It is even anywhere you go in the world, there is almost no reluctance left. Everyone pretty much does it. I mean, then there is also the data validation step, but that's much better than it used to be. So yeah, data collection.
Great. Thanks, Viviane. Kartik, Marceau, would you like to add anything to that question? No. Yeah. And I guess that's also what Sea Cargo Charter strive to do, right? To improve the data collection. So I'm really happy that we can kind of check that and that we continue to try and improve it together with the signatories.
Actually, I've just thought about something that might matter. I do think that one change that I have seen recently, is it last year or the year before, where we sort of started to welcome owners a bit more. We were, I guess, probably the only signatory that was effectively an owner when we joined in 2020. And I think tying back to the asset side, we need the owners to sort of build the assets that answer the solutions that we found, or are the solutions to the problem we're trying to solve. And I think this is a very welcome move to sort of welcome owners and share knowledge and tell them, listen, we've been doing this for a while now. We know what works, and commercially as well. And this is a great step I've seen in the last 2 years.
Thanks, Marceau. And maybe if I can follow up on that. So why do you think it's also important for owners, like for them to be in Sea Cargo Charter? Like, why is it important to have both of them in the association instead of just, previously charters were just collecting the data and trying to collaborate with owners that way. But why is it important to actually have the owners in Sea Cargo Charter as well?
I think the communication of the result, and then maybe there is also, let's say, a size difference between charterers and owners, especially in some sectors where effectively owners, the smaller companies, they don't have extensive data science teams. They don't have access to this sort of analysis. Big chartering companies do, and the results of their findings can therefore very easily be shared. And also the fact that we all collaborate together, we also confirm each other our results. When this is shared for the owners, effectively it makes the decision for them easier in the sense that they don't have to do the whole analysis themselves, which is lengthy and they perhaps don't have the capabilities. And so the charter is effectively communicating that this is what we want, and for these reasons, and it will also work out for you. So we can, for example, attest that it does. I think then the decision to invest in the right assets is so much easier for the owners that were not part of the Sea Cargo Charter before.
Thanks, Marceau. We had a question from online, and it ties into what you just said a little bit. So someone is asking, in short, and according to your experience, what would you say to future signatories to convince them to join the association, both the charterers and ship owners? Kartik, do you want to start? Or Marceau, if you have
No,
something.
no, go for it. Okay, I'll start. So on the owner side, it's really you basically get to leverage all of the biggest companies in the world's data science teams for free, effectively. But teams of genuinely experts have worked for years on this, and that knowledge is now shared for free. As an owner, it's inconceivable for me, at least, to not just try. Yeah.
Thank you. Kartik?
Yeah, no, I completely agree with him. I mean, we've got the quantum of data that we have available to us, and we have to look at collectively trying to understand what and how we are using that data. Is it for our advantage? Are we taking advantage and of the insights that we're getting from that, from these, I don't know, humongous amount of data that we are generating? And if we cannot take advantage of that, it is going to it's not going to be good for us. And that's where I feel that all the associations and everything has to come together, and which is also one of the aspects that, of course, when you talk about the challenges, but we can go about that. But I completely agree with Marceau that we have to use the data to our advantage.
Thank you, Kartik. Vivienne, you have anything to add?
Yes, maybe to go in a slightly different direction. I think another advantage, let's say, of the Sea Cargo Charter is the platform, the collaborative platform. And I'm thinking in particular to the annual meeting that we held in April, and where there was like a knowledge sharing session with very interesting presentation. And I think it is beneficial for us. I can only imagine it would be for everyone else.
Thanks for pointing that out, Vivian. I'm seeing that we get more questions from online. So this one is a bit more technical, and let's see if anyone has an answer to it. But someone asks, can we expect any factor coming in to the methodology to balance and create a level playing field for vessels performing long voyages versus short voyages? Yeah. I guess none of you can answer if we're going to have that, because we have democratic processes in Sea Cargo Charter, but maybe you have any comment on that regardless.
Yeah, I'll speak a bit on that because we have many small vessels that spend a lot of time in ports, and we do notice that these are the ones that perform the worst and by far. because effectively they're just not moving, but the engines are still on. I'm not too sure if we want to adjust for it, or on the let's say the factor side. I think we should still keep it in mind that these trades, how to say, what I want to get to is that these are the trades that should be, for example, preferred for things like onshore power supply. The fact that they spend a lot of time in port and have terrible performance emission-wise, it shouldn't be a factor that, okay, we just need to adjust the calculation. Then no, we have to use this to effectively find the solution, and there are solutions for this. Onshore power supply is one of them.
Thanks. Kartik, do you want to add something?
I'm just going to weigh in here. I mean, we can statistically, think about how we normalize speeds when it comes to charter parties and analyzing vessel curves. We can also bring in a factor for that. But we have to look at what advantages it going to give us. I don't think there is any advantage. Rather than looking at a long and a short voyage, I would rather look at what vessels we deploy on the longer and the shorter voyages. Um, on the shorter voyages, if we have old tonnage, which is slightly of takes a little slightly higher consumption, and say a non-eco vessel, I would run that for a shorter voyage. But on the longer transatlantic or cross-Pacific voyages, I would look at eco vessels, higher speeds. That would give us more of a operational advantage.
Thanks. Vivian?
If I can jump in from more technical committee perspective, I feel there are like probably two different issues in there. There is the smaller vessels, as Marceau mentioned, that are usually that have higher EOIs structurally, and then that usually belong to smaller owners. So any decarbonation effort is, let's say, relatively more expensive than for the bigger vessels. And secondly, there is the length and the trades issues. And I'm going to share something internally. We have some, let's say, Aframaxes that are doing very short voyages, but they do triangulate a lot. And we found that, digging a bit into the data, that they were actually having great EOIs because they have no ballast. So the shorter voyages, they don't bring much transport work, but at the same time, they offer the possibility for triangulation, which is a very effective way to bring your EOI down. So I don't think we're ruling trying to create a level field for this issue totally out, but that's a very complex question, and it's probably a good game for advisory if we ever ask them.
Thanks, Vivian, and thanks all of you for answering that question. So now that was a very more nitty-gritty technical question about Sea Cargo Charter. Now there was another question online that looks a bit more into the big picture. So someone asked, should emission reporting and climate compliance be a condition for obtaining or renewing a vessel's seaworthiness certificate? And mentioning, especially in light of recent incidents with the Elsa 3 sinking. Of course, this goes a little bit beyond Sea Cargo Charter, but maybe any of you has some opinions on that. Kartik.
I think it's an interesting question, but I think we are confusing two issues. And again, that's my take on it. Uh, Emission reporting and climate compliance can be completely separated from the seaworthiness and safety of a vessel. So I would not want to look at these two in the same light. But just to elaborate on that, we also see a lot of pressure in terms of reporting on the vessel staff, because you've got the owners wanting the report in a format, you've got the charterers wanting it in another format, and so on and so forth. You've got some reporting tools, everything. And we need to get away from this, because we need to allow the vessel staff to concentrate on what they do best. They are there to handle the vessels to ensure safe passage. So I think we need to, or at least on shore, we need to ensure that we use the tools available to us, and uh, all the integrations available to us to minimize the workload on the vessel staff, and then making it safer for them.
Thanks, Kartik. Very clear. Anything to add, Vivian, Marceau? No, I think that was already a pretty clear answer. Thank you, Kartik. I would like to go a bit back on Sea Cargo Charter and emissions reporting. So we already talked about the improvements of reporting through Sea Cargo Charter, but according to you, what are the biggest challenges ahead, both in terms of transparency and emissions reporting, but also in terms of actually then reducing emissions? Vivian, can I call on you to start?
Yes. I think for transparency, I mean, if I take the transparency challenge, let's say, I think it's still seen as a very, let's say, even though it's improved a lot, as very strategic information, and there's a lot of reluctance to share, actual figures. Like if I for us, I think that starting with Sea Cargo Charter and having a score which you can't work out, you can't make reverse engineering to know what we have, that like the number of vessels we're chartering, the number of voyages, where we're going. I think it helped a lot, because it allows us both to start with some transparency, to like start the pump of transparency, let's say, and at the same times make sure we're sort of safe in terms of data, in terms of business. And I think the biggest challenge now will be to set the sort of the limits between what is business and what should remain probably private secret, however you call it, and what is common knowledge and collab and should be available to everyone, to help everyone. And I think that's in terms of transparency, that's probably and emission reporting, that's the biggest challenge I see. In terms of reducing the emission, let's say, I could list the cost and the yard being a bit overbooked these days, and the uncertainty, the regulatory uncertainty, and like even tax uncertainty these days.
Thanks, Vivian. Any more insights, Kartik?
I think I'm just going to just load up on Vivian's narrative here. Um, when we're looking at transparency and data, we also need to we are only looking at vessel reporting data, but I think we need to go right to the source. And when I'm talking to the source, I'm talking to the yard. There has to be a minimum equipment requirement in terms of reporting. We now have, I mean, all the vessels are equipped with internet capabilities. So why aren't we getting high frequency data from them rather than masters and chief engineers reporting? And that will enhance the validity, that will enhance the efficacy of the data we are getting. So I think there needs to be a global minimum equipment requirement in terms of, for emissions reporting, these equipments have to be fitted on the vessel. So this is something that we need to be not work in a siloed environment, but look at it in a much more broader perspective.
Thanks, Kartik. Perfect. I also see that we're soon on time. So with that, I think before we leave, it would be great if each of you could maybe provide some short closing remarks, any last words you'd like to say, maybe even dedicated to some prospects that are on the fence of joining but not yet fully decided, or anything else, up to you. And Marco, I would like to start with you, please.
Sure. I guess if there are any owners out there tinkering on whether they should join or not, I would urge them to do so. Get in touch with the Secretariat, speak to the signatories, speak to us. We've already had a couple of talks successfully with owners who were waiting basically to get some information to join. And no, there is some very valuable information being shared amongst the signatories. It's really worth it. So I think, yeah, that would be the final message to the owners. Do join us.
Thank you, Marco. Very clear. Vivian, please go next.
Well, I'll probably build on what Marco just said, and I would add that it probably looks more complicated than it actually is to be a Sea Cargo Charter member. And anyway, as Kartik said, all the pain that we could have at the beginning, it is going to be repaid by everything you're going to mine from the data that you're going to get. And yeah, so join us, and we'll be here to help anyway, and don't hesitate. Really.
Thanks, Vivian. Kartik, you have the final words.
Oh, need I say more? I mean, both of them have elaborated quite well, but I think there's just a lot of advantages in how Vivian said, in collaborating and just understanding what other owners, other charters, other companies have to bring into the forum. Uh, Again, like I said, if we're not leveraging that for decarbonization, I think then we are going to fall short of our goal. So I'll leave it with that statement.
Perfect. Thanks a lot. Thank you all so much for being here today. I thought it was a fantastic panel, some great questions asked as well. So thanks for everyone who joined and listened and asked questions. Yeah, as I said before, this webinar was recorded. You'll be able to listen to it again on LinkedIn or also on YouTube. And yeah, with that, I wish everyone a really nice day. Thanks again to our speakers. And if you have any more questions about the Sea Cargo Charter, please reach out to the Secretariat and we'll be happy to answer them. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.